Another month of reading in the books. So this is going to be my wrap up for December of 2020. Now, I did not stick entirely to my TBR that I had planned because I ran out of time to read some of the bigger stuff. Is what it is. I fit in the Dragon Republic instead. So here's what I read in the month of December. I started off December with my Howler pick of the month. One of two, actually, because I had two of them. So for my Patreon, our high tier patrons are the Howlers, which is an ode to Red Rising. And you get to pick a book, at least one, vote on it, basically pick a book that I read every other month. And there was actually a tie between Kings of the Wild and The Forgetting Moon. So Kings of the Wild I read first. This was my first Nicholas Eames novel, as obviously this was his debut novel as well. I was highly anticipating it. A lot of people told me it was hilarious. It was heartfelt. The characters were great to follow. It was like a fun D&D campaign, not to take too seriously. And that's pretty much what I got. I do have a full review of this and every book that I'm going to talk about here. But it was a great introduction to his writing style. It was very, it felt very comforting to read a book like this after reading, tons of Stormlight books and Wheel of Time and stuff like that, where it's not taking itself too seriously. It's, an ode to 70s and 80s rock music, lots of references, very subtle for most of them. The band, as it were, are very interesting characters to follow, and it just felt like a nice, save somebody, liberate a city quest, and you get lost along the way and a bunch of side quests and things catching you off guard to kind of derail you from your main objective. I do know that there is a sequel, Bloody Rose, but this effectively functions as a standalone, so it's definitely a good one to pick up if you want something a little bit lighter to read. You can get through it pretty quickly, and it's not a lot of investment. So definitely recommend Kings of the Wild. Next up was The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. Now this I fit into my TBR in December for a BookTube Secret Santa. That video is here. And this was one of my favorite reads of all of 2020. This book was fantastic. I think it kicked Poppy War's ass up and down the street. This was better in every conceivable way, and it has me incredibly excited to get to The Burning God this month, which I added to my January TBR because I want to finish the series now. I love this world that R.F. Kuang has created. It's gritty, it's dark, it's violent as hell, lots of pain and suffering, and she pulls so much from historic China and the Opium Wars and all this real life shit that happened, including very grotesque and horrible scenes that happen in real life. Basically gives them a fantasy twist and puts them in her novel. The characters are great, the action's great, the dialogue is well done, and they're paced beautifully. I love how good these feel to read. You're never bored, you're never falling asleep during any of this. It's all very engaging. I personally like pretty much the entire cast of characters, including Rin. She can be hard to cheer for at times, and that's obviously intentional because she does a lot of stupid shit. She's not a perfect person by any means, and much like other grimdark novels or settings, there's a lot of characters that they aren't really very good people, so it's kind of hard to even cheer for the main people that you follow. And Rin especially, I mean, she at times she's pretty hard to root for, but personally I like her a lot, and I like when she goes a little crazy. The other Howler pick of the month was this Chunky Boy by Brian Lee Durfee, which is book 1 of the Five Warrior Angels saga, and that is The Forgetting Moon. So this was a fantastic debut novel by Brian Lee Durfee in his epic series that, as I said in my review, was initially 5 books, cut down to 3, but now they are expanded. So this book was big. The Blackest Heart, which I have back here on my shelf, is even bigger, and The Lonesome Crown, which should come out sometime this year, hopefully, is going to be gigantic. So very, very chunky boys. This is epic fantasy at its finest. He pulls a lot from Tad Williams, from George R.R. Martin, from all of his, Terry Brooks, all these people that he looks up to. And like I said in my review, he kind of blends a prose style of a Robert Jordan and a John Gwynne. So it's more digestible than Robert Jordan while still being very descriptive, but it's a little bit faster paced and easy to get through. like a John Gwynne. Brian does a fantastic job of description when it comes to characters and certain settings, not to the level that Jordan does, where he explains in detail a lot of kind of arbitrary things. But he doesn't overdo it. That's why I kind of say it's a good blend, because the action and the dialogue is well done. It was paced pretty well, even for being such a multi-POV story where you're following all these different characters. This is very much branching storylines, foundational build-up, getting you introduced to the world and the setting and the very, very minimal magic system. This is pretty much just like a medieval fantasy setting, and you get to learn a lot about these characters, Nail being your main POV. You have others such as John Drolin or, what is that dickhead's name? Janko, that's the one. It's already been nearly a month since I read this, so I'm forgetting names apparently. It's in my review. But yeah, it was a great book, and I can't wait for The Blackest Heart. The fourth book I read was wrapping up the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence, and that would be Holy Sister. I thought this was a fantastic book 3 to the series. It wrapped up everything pretty nicely, albeit a little bit fast towards the end. That was my one main complaint. But I really like the world that he created here. Nona Gray is one of my favorite characters that I read all of 2020. The magic system, the path is interesting and mysterious and not straightforward at all. It's super abstract, but it's cool to read about. And Mark Lawrence's writing style I really fell in love with this series. And I love his blend of sort of purple prose when he wants to. He can be very poetic at times, but also very approachable at other times. So he blends those two perfectly. These books have great relationships, great female characters, lots of badass women in these books, and they get pretty violent at times. And I definitely recommend this series, and it has me wanting to read more Mark Lawrence. So I read this, and right before this, as I was told, there was a novella, a very short one, 16,000 words, called Bound, which kind of bridges the gap between Grey Sister and Holy Sister. It's more of like a kind of a romance and a murder mystery combined. It was pretty interesting, though, and I'm glad that I read it before Holy Sister, because there are certain things that cross over and are apparent in this book that you might miss if you didn't read that. So definitely recommend Book of the Ancestor. And last but certainly not least, that would be Mort by Terry Pratchett. So this was book 1 of the Death series, but book 4 of Discworld, and I actually just dropped my review on Monday for this. This was a breath of fresh air compared to all the other kinds of epic fantasy and stuff that I read. This is my first introduction into Discworld, and it was great. I thought it was hilarious all the way through. The plot just being completely ridiculous, of Death getting an apprentice and having an adopted daughter, and all the wacky shenanigans and obscure things that Discworld brings, while also being incredibly intelligent and well written. It's just fantastic, and I can't wait to read more, because I think Terry Pratchett, even just from this brief introduction of mine reading Mort, I think I'm really going to enjoy his writing style and the intelligence and commentary that he brings to these books, where he parallels a lot of things in real life. People I'm talking to says the commentary gets even better, and he really parallels things that are going on in the world or were going on in the world when he wrote them. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I'm probably going to read Guards next, because that is the other one that I bought recently, and I want to try a couple of different series within Discworld to see which one I vibe with the most before continuing on. And whereas before, and it still remains this way for now, Dresden being a perfect palate cleanser book because they're a little bit shorter, they're quick reads, and they're also incredible. These are great palate cleansers as well, because I had a couple days left in December, and I didn't want to try to rush through a bigger book. So I initially had Death Masks, for example, on my TBR. It's a little bit longer than this. It was going to take me into January, and I wanted to start Gardens of the Moon January 1st. So I picked this up, and I read it, and I loved it. I'm glad that I fit it in the last 2 days of the month, because it was very quick to read, but it was entertaining throughout, and I cannot wait to get into more Discworld. Overall, though, December was great. Continuing the Poppy War, Dragon Republic, like I said, one of the best books I read all year long. Forgetting Moon, one of the best debut novels I read in a long time. Kings of the Wild was a lot of fun. Mort was a hell of an introduction to Discworld. And Holy Sister, I'm glad that I wrapped up Book of the Ancestor. I really recommend that series. It's great. So, like and subscribe. As always, do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially. That's always optional, but always appreciated. Do jump in Discord, though, or leave me a comment down below if you want to continue this conversation with me about whatever books you want to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these books that I read in December, and I would love to know what you read in December, and maybe what you're planning on reading in January. Let's throw that one in there, too. So, until next time, everybody, keep reading.